Making it up as I go. That's the Paul Show. Hi, my name is Paul. Welcome to my show. Today we're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons, but first, a public service announcement. I hated the audio on the first upload of this, so I'm just redoing it, and I'm going to try to make it a little bit shorter, if at all possible, or at least more concise. That being said, we'll get right into it. First, we're going to lay out the objectives that we're going to cover during this session. We've got objectives A, B, C, D, and E. So a total of 5 objectives to accomplish, and we've got a little bit of detail as to each one. A is going to be a retcon and more or less a recap of our previous planning session. What did we change from what we had planned? Objective B is a recap and intro for our players into some information and activities to do with the campaign and its setting. Objective C is traveling and what's going to occur through it. How do we make it feel real and somewhat dramatic? And then Objective D is at the end of the travel. So once we accomplish Objective C, we'll move into Objective D, which is an action sequence with this monster called the Shambling Mound. And it's a variation of what has been called a skill challenge. We'll go into detail on that later. And Objective E is introducing my players to, let's hide the book here, introducing my players to either Lakeside Village here or the ranch here. And more or less kind of helping outline NPCs that might be of interest to them while they're there. And they're going to be traveling from this room here. And that's our outline. Objective A. So we're going to talk about first what we're going to retcon. One of the things I tried to do last session was set up some narrative threads for the next time they visit, in having laid out buildings to be constructed by the people of that village. There were 2 buildings I forgot, so at the start of the session, before we do any introductions or anything, we're going to have the players lay out those plots of land. And then we can talk about what we changed from the last session. So last time we had planned out a couple different things. The joint dream of my players to introduce this creature called the Voidfish didn't come to fruition. Instead, I had my players just directly meet the Voidfish through an NPC, kind of fixing up some mechanics in the room to then reveal it. At which point I gave my players like a headache. I described them having a splitting pain shoot through their minds. And that'll be something we could touch on a little bit later, but that's what we changed. And another thing we changed, we planned out a Gorgon and Hill Giant encounter. We ended up changing the way we thought that was going to go. The reason for that is because the Boulette and the Troll proved to be more deadly than I anticipated. I don't know why I'm using this mic. This is the mic that I'm using. Haha. I don't know why. So anyway, can't take myself too seriously. Oh wow, big loss of train of thought. Right, we're talking about what we changed. The Boulette and the Troll proved to be too dangerous, too deadly, and so we ended up making the Gorgon and the Hill Giant kind of fight it out, and the objective for the players during that encounter was to sneak past the fight occurring around them, like sneaking past unseen while the 2 objects are distracted with each other. I of course still wanted to have combat there and have them fight something, so I ended up killing the Hill Giant, and the Gorgon, a little bit damaged and bruised, would be attacking the players, and then there would be a fight there, which turned out pretty well, if I do say so myself. I thought it was cool. And that's what we changed from the last session. Yep. And so we're moving on to Objective B, recapping and introing our players to the day's session, wherein we're going to describe what happened last time, the headache shooting through their minds as they've been introduced to the Voidfish. And from there, we're going to continue to describe that scene wherein the players actually pass out for 2 or 3 days, and Nesnar and the Bone Defender are the only living things, I guess, to take care of stuff. So they've gone hunting, they've got a little bit of deer that they're cooking, and they're trying to wake the players up by hanging the food over their mouths. Or under their noses, I guess. And so the players wake up and we go to describe that scene. Nesnar's trying to wake them up, and Nesnar is going to start telling them about all the functions of the room. He says, I was able to fix the local area display and the countdown display, but the other devices here need to be fixed as well, and you can see that here. Numbers 1 through 7, 1, 2, 6, and 7 are all kind of quality of life changes or narrative reasons to give my players a certain amount of information so they know what they're doing at all times, hopefully. I have no idea if that's going to be the actual effect, though. They're 3, 4, 5, numbers 3, 4, and 5 here are all narratively purposed, wherein it's necessary to the plot that they get those things done. And that's really about it. He's going to deliver that information, and because they've got Nesnar, he kind of more or less writes them a list, and this is the information on the list. You got these functions, I fixed these two, we need materials for each of those things, and some are going to take longer because they're narratively oriented, and some are going to take shorter time because they're more quality of life oriented. And that's that, and more or less I plan for them to spend like maybe a day here trying to get some of those quicker tasks done, wherein these rock deposits have the ore that is necessary for some of those quality of life changes, or the stones necessary. And then that is them spending the day there, and Nesnar's going to kind of intro this activity or influence the direction by saying at the end here, the local area display is telling me there is some ore in one of the stone protrusions nearby. Maybe we could get the quest progress calculator online today. Can one of you, or maybe all of you, go check that out, please? And so that's a thing that exists in the quest log now. And he says, oh, before you go, Fisher here is still super hungry. I've been trying to make poetry, art, musical compositions, macaroni art, sculptures. It's not enough. I need your help. Make a couple things while you're gone. Or think about something to write for it. And so they have a couple of objectives there. And that would cover Objective B, wherein there's a couple activities to get done here. We've introduced our players to the session today, more or less describing the environment and then bringing the control back to the characters so they can act on certain things. And so I don't plan on them spending too long here. They might be able to get certain things done, wherein on the quest log, one of these things only needs a pound of gold, and they might have that much gold. I didn't actually look, so they could do something kind of cool and get that done early. That being said, that's Objective B. Objective C, we're moving on now to the travel portion of this. And so we've got a number of, I guess, narrative beats we want to cover as our players travel, and we've got 7 beats that we want to cover that will constitute the majority of our players' travel for that day. I've just got them numbered out here, so we're going to start with beat 1. Thunderstorms and heavy rain after breaking camp. We're going to describe the scene of clouds rolling in, the shade kind of covering the area. It's getting a little bit darker, some winds are blowing, and then you hear the crack of thunder and then rain. And it's going to be pretty heavy rain while they're traveling. That's beat 1, and so that's going to happen as soon as they leave camp, you know. And then our players are traveling over this way, right? And beat 2 is going to be right before they exit the edge of the forest here. And more or less what I've got planned is a lightning bolt is going to strike and flash up the area, at which point my players would make a perception roll. And they would, if they succeed, see a pack of owlbears. They're going to end up fighting the owlbears if they don't end up seeing them. That being said, if I want them to fight them or not, I'm not sure. That's for me to think about in the moment. And I don't think I would. I plan on them passing this. I don't think there's a reason for them to fail it. But that being said, they're going to exit the edge of the forest, and about a couple 100 feet away, a final bolt of thunder or lightning is going to crash down in the forest behind them, and they're going to hear like owlbears start to scream, like cries of pain. They're dying, but they don't get to see what's going on. And that is the climax of the storm, at which point the clouds would start to dissipate, but only slowly. So there's like thunder in the distance, and the rain is heavy but getting lighter as time passes on. That's the third narrative beat. Beat number 4, they're going to travel another 5 miles peacefully, actually. Nothing happens in between here, and at which point they're going to notice the 2 areas here, as well as noticing that they're in boulette territory. They've got a lot of tracks that they can identify, and at this point the rain is kind of a little bit lighter. It's normal rain at this point, and there's not too much thunder in the distance, once every minute, couple minutes. But 2 things are happening. They're noticing the tracks, and they're deciding to continue on to Lakeside or check out this other area they've just found. I'm assuming they're going to go to Lakeside, so if you think they're going to Lakeside, leave a thumbs up. If you think they're going to the range, leave a thumbs down. And so they're going to travel another mile in that direction before actually encountering the boulette. We're going to describe it breaking the surface and shaking off some of the wet dirt off of its shell, identifying the party as prey, and then burrowing back under towards them, and they see like a wave of dirt across the ground. And that's that. That is beat number 6, and we're going to actually supplement the boulette with a displacer beast. Displacer beast is going to move in on the players as well. I think a party of 4 is going to be able to handle that. It's technically 3, but they've got an NPC with them. And that point, it's kind of light rain at this point, and that's really it. And so beat 6 is our combat. Beat 5 was choosing the direction to head, as well as recognizing the tracks, and beat 7 is hopefully going to be a short rest. I'm going to have my NPC speak up at this point and say, hey, I'm a little famished, and it's about like noon, it's about lunchtime, can we break for lunch and then crack back at it, at which point they're going to short rest, and I'm going to move on to Objective D. Objective D is what we're going to call an action sequence. There's a guy named Fred. He runs a channel called How to D&D on YouTube. Love your stuff, Fred. Thank you for making all the stuff you have. And so we're breaking up Objective D into 4 scenes. There's going to be 4 scenes of this action sequence that occur. One of those scenes is actually just going to be the combat that plays out between our shambling mound here and the players. But scenes 1, 2, and 4 are all going to be similar to Fred's skill challenge, wherein the consequences are maybe like a D10 of damage or something, based on your players' levels, obviously. And it's not going to be like, oh, you're getting immediately grappled. You're going to have a chance to save if you don't succeed the action scene. That being said, there's no actual skill check to be made. There is an action that I'm going to give the players after describing a scene as best as I can to convey a singular danger or problem that they need to solve with that one action. And I'll be setting a 30-second timer in order to increase the suspense, let's say, but more or less I'm going to work with whatever they come up with. to really embellish the story of combat, because the Shambling Mound is only a challenge rating 5 monster, and as a single encounter with only 15 AC, that's not a really... I don't think that's a challenge 5. I feel like the challenge would be more like a 4. That being said, that's not the point here, focusing on the challenge rating. It's to make the monster feel dangerous. And so we're going to talk about scene 1 here. And so the way it works, more or less, is we're going to describe what the monster does. And we're going to be describing this in off of the short rest that our players are taking, wherein they're resting and then they witness like shadows behind them. And so here's the description of the first one. We then give them an action and ask for what they do with that action. And so here's the first scene. In slow motion, dark tendrils weave a net of shadows over all of you, a shambling mound twisting its fused vines' roots, colored in crimson with clumps of feathers from the owlbears you heard in the forest earlier. They're set to engulf you all. You have one action. What do you do? At which point we'll set a 30-second timer and ask them what they do, describe those things play out, and hopefully it won't take more than like a couple... I don't plan on it taking more than 30 seconds. My players will all have to be ready with something after that time. I don't think it'll take too long, maybe like 5 minutes at the most to play out each scene. Scene 2, at which point we're going to assume that our players have escaped at this point, damaged or no, wherein they've just escaped the clutches, like the maw of it, and now it's going to, and we'll describe it here. The twisted plant matter crashes in on itself, compressing tightly, and shoots out towards each of you with a barrage of spike-like vines, suited to pierce and puncture. You have one action. What do you do? And so whatever they decide to do, we're going to work with that to help them avoid the piercing and puncturing vines. And then at this point they'd be at a standstill, assuming they succeeded that, and combat's going to break out. That's our third scene in the combat, at which point they're going to defeat the Shambling Mound outright. And scene 4 is going to be like feigning death, and then with its last 20 HP it's going to start skulking along the ground as our players are walking away, and we'll describe that here. The mound of plant life collapses to the ground lifeless. The next moment you all return your focus to traveling and turn around, tired from the unexpectedness of it all, only having made 3 steps before you hear something and you turn around to see it skulking along the ground. Oh, it lurches forward with great ferocity. You have one action. What do you do? And so this will be one last chance for our players to defend themselves from the thing, go through another 20 HP, at which point the Shambling Mound would have been defeated and our action sequence completed. That rhymed. Pretty proud of that. That would conclude Objective D. Objective E is going to be our introduction to one of the 2 areas here, either the ranch or lakeside. That being said, I've spent more time on Lakeside's NPCs than the ranch's NPCs, and there's a lot less NPCs at the ranch. That being said, we're going to talk about the ranch first because there's less detail in there. And so we've prepared handouts for each of these areas to read, to kind of describe the area as the players would see it, like try to visualize it for them, help them get immersed in it, and help them identify NPCs to potentially talk to and interact with. That being said, because there's less here, they only see 2 of the NPCs that actually exist here out of 4, so that's half of them already. And we could talk about these at greater length. That being said, I've themed them off of Courage the Cowardly Dog. I think it was pretty fun. I don't know. And it's still got that theme where Courage is the one to recognize the danger first, or recognize the truth in the situation, whereas Eustace and Muriel kind of just eventually follow along should Courage succeed. Egan Harrownest, I have no idea who he's going to be like, but he's got ties to the other villages, which makes him feel more real. Or ties to just other townships that exist in this world, so him knowing of other places or having items from other places might give him a little more depth, even though I don't know what his character really is. Yeah, that's Longbottom Ranch, and then we've got Lakeside, and because we're a little more prepared with our Lakeside information, I don't mind reading this one out to you. And so, if my players are traveling along this way, right? Let's pull that back up. Oop, wrong. Haha, there we go. And it's hidden behind the book still. Glad I noticed before reading it, though. So, like, coming into here, they've got like a mile, right? And here we go. Upon coming into view of the caravan of... I read that terribly. Upon coming into view of the village, you can see a caravan of 3 wagons traveling north. The closer you get, the clearer the goods they are carrying become. You see a variety of fruits, vegetables, and grains carried in thatched sacks, wooden baskets, and barrels. One of the carts stops off at a building as a young man comes out of the structure, no larger than 40 feet, as he meets with the driver of the wagon, talks with him for a bit over the goods being transported, and a few moments later hands the driver a small sack of what you presume to be payment for the goods. The young man then unloads the cart, and the driver turns around to head south yet again. The other 2 carts continue northward, towards what could be Wardwool, because my players are aware that place exists. Coming to about 100 feet away from the road, you notice 2 more things happening. A commander facilitates and organizes the switching of platoon duties as one leaves the tower and another fills its place to keep watch. Just as the duties are being finished, he makes eye contact with your group and looks back to his platoon and orders them to head to the mess tent. The platoon starts to head out, and he gives a nod in your direction and brings up the end of his platoon's ranks as he heads further into the village. Looking up on the tower, it seems to be just over 50 feet in height. Equipped with what seems to be a telescope, the southeast corner at the top of the tower, the guards standing there are equipped with slingshots, bows, crossbows, a variety of projectiles, and you see another happening. You see a number of men and women taking up gear in the form of nets, spears, baskets, rods, carrying them out to the boats on the dock further in the village. One man's voice stands out among them, organizing their efforts and ensuring that all hands are out on the lake just before sunrise. As he gets into his own boat and sets out after them, correcting and informing the hands as they go. Upon reaching the road, you see an elderly couple out for a walk. They point out squirrels and birds, other wildlife that seems to peacefully coexist with the small village. One moment they notice you and wave, another moment they return to their walk, and you're now in Lakeside Village. I could show you that place. I am Imgur, Great Artiste. Just saying that. There's some NPCs here that we left out. The librarian, to be specific, the smith, and I think that was it. Oh, no, yeah. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 NPCs technically that we left out. These ones are more faceless NPCs that I had to give names because they like exist around this NPC. So the way I've organized that is just making a folder called Harris's NPCs. We're actually doing really great on time. This is actually the end of Objective E, wherein we kind of turn control over the players after traveling and experiencing the action sequence. They finally get to the village that they set out for in the first place, and they're going to reach this, and hopefully by that time 3 or 4 hours have been filled up, and that would be my session. But interacting here with a number of the NPCs would consume the last hour or so, I would say, maybe the last half hour. It really depends on how things are paced, how long the combats take. Hopefully they're a little bit faster, but still take up a good amount of time, because there's going to be 2 of them. I always feel like it's good to have my players fight things. I know I do it in a more Final Fantasy style, earlier Final Fantasy, where the players are traveling on this overworld, there's a random encounter, and then you get on your way. That's kind of how I see the way I run the travel in my games, but I feel like that adds a sense of realism to the travel But that's more meta talk in terms of how I feel the game should be run, or what I try to value, or what I make the standard for myself, I guess. That's a whole weird conversation, but we're not talking about it today. Thanks for watching, y'all. My name's Paul. I never had any notes. I'm kidding. I had notes. I'll show you these notes. Ooh, those are notes. And then show you these notes. That's Objective E, more or less, because we've got a lot of stuff prepared that is just more freeform than traveling or running the rest of the session, wherein we're delivering information and other such things. Yeah, I had notes. I lied to you. Ha. Joke's on you. Once again, I'll remind you, if you think my players are going to Lakeside, thumbs up. If you think my players are going to the range, thumbs down. Let me know what you think. Either way, it helps. Yeah, thanks for watching. I've been making this up as I go. That's the Paul Show.